First of all, I never ran surveillance on him, but I described his wife and his many girlfriends because all the pictures that were on the hard drive. Second of all, I had convinced him that I knew his best friend because of all the emails that I correlated from that drive and all the sites that they belonged to. And then I had convinced him during the interrogation, I talked to my watch a little bit, and I told him to go outside and look up and then come back inside. And I said, what did you just do? Why do you think I had you look up in the sky? And he said, because you had the satellites taking pictures of me. I said, exactly. Now we can continue. So this is going on for about an hour and a half, and I have the translator next to me like, Jay, are you on drugs or something? I'm like, dude, just bear with me on this. So all the stuff that we learned, from the forensic standpoint, and a notion of what I finally concluded, there is such thing as digital exhaust. We all leave it. And digital exhaust is useful in investigations and anything else. At the end of the day, I got more information out of this guy from using those tactics than it ended up working out well for us and the United States in general. So that's sort of a vignette of taking a completely different alternative and perspective and listening to police officers when you're a spec ops guy, and listening to IRS investigators, or listening to Hollywood people that have a problem with watermarked and pirating DVDs and how they approach that problem. So for the special operations community, we really build our capability of focusing on passionate people from many different disparate organizations working toward a common end state. And in our cases, that end state might be a person, it might be capture, kill, or something like that, but it is an end state that's quantifiable, and we very much appreciate the diverse contributions to that. So that's sort of my little vignette on how do you take all this different information and use it towards something, the social engineering aspect, the technical forensic aspect, etc. And I ask you guys, as you continue to explore, where cyber interacts, just keep in mind the convergent zone between humans and technology. I mean, it's on a collision course. I mean, we bring our cell phones with us, and we bring our friends to the bar with us. We talk to our friends in all these environments. We're constantly on our phone. It's continuing on that road. So in the current paradigm, we need to keep those considerations at close hand if we're involved in an investigation or some sort of targeting, whether you're DOD or just straight security protection. So I'll be taking questions later on too, if you have any.
Let's see, we're supposed to talk about what, Jerry? Confessions? All of mine are online, so all you have to do is look for them out there, basically. Let's see, a couple of confessions. Let's see, I've got 3 here. Number 1, why I only have 1 child. Back in the early 90s, I was running a BBS. How many of you actually have ever logged on to a BBS? My God.
How about run one?
Well,
ask who's run one.
How many of you all been a SysOp?
A BBS op.
How many of you are running Wildcat?
Yeah.
A couple of you, okay. So you'll all understand this then, okay. So I'm running this BBS. I was at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, and we had to go through a thing called the Professional Development Training Program. So I don't have war stories like these guys. My war stories go way back to the Vietnam era, and some of those I can't talk about. I'm military intelligence, and you all know that's an oxymoron. So back in the early 90s, I'm running this BBS, and I gave students an assignment to hack my BBS. And this was a telecom communications fraud training program. And I made the mistake of letting the guy who was running this program get access to the hack himself. So he lets all the students into the wire closet, and they went out and they got a copy of Wildcat, freeware version, and they put it all up, and they made it look just like my BBS. They all logged in and captured all it was a pretty good little hack, but it's the last time I ever let my students do that. So I'm running this BBS as a project for this professional development training program to become what they call a senior instructor. And I'm running it out of my bedroom. Now, I'm still married to my wife of 40 years after this all happened, so I'm a very fortunate man. But I made the mistake of letting people, turning the page the SysOp feature on, and I call it digititis interruptus. So that's why we only have 1 child, basically. I had to move it into the living room, I have to confess, and turn the page the SysOp feature on. Number 2, most embarrassing moment would be something that happened. These next 2 have all happened within the last hour. Number 1, I have a reward for the black bag I left in row number 7 out here during the last panel. And if any of you find it, I'll be glad to give you some nice NSA swag. Okay, so.
It was in the bag.
There's the winner, right there. Yeah. Yeah. No, the iPad that's in there is not what your reward is. I hate to tell you that. Okay. Okay. So, and then the other blooper also occurred within the last hour. I managed to leave my retired credentials down in the speaker room, and I have to thank Mr. Mortman for bringing them up to me and then just fronting me out in front of the whole crowd up here that I'd done that too. So, those are all relatively minor confessions. Some of the things that these guys down here are going to have to confess to, because I know what they need to confess to.
All right, I'll confess to a personal story, and then I'll talk about a more relevant story. Since you're confessing personal things with your family, go back to 1999. Do you remember the Explore Zip virus? Anybody remember that? It's about the same time as I Love You and Melissa, it was all that in that time frame. So we had just established the Joint Task Force for Computer Network Defense, JTF-C&D. Our mission, of course, was to figure out how to best defend the DoD against all things foreign, evil, domestic, whatever, that are going to come in through cyberspace. When Melissa let loose that spring, we did the right thing. System administrators were notified. We took the code, learned about it, blah, blah, blah. And there was a number of other worms and viri that were floating around. But I'm at work one morning, I received this email. It's got an email attachment. It's coming from a friend of mine, all this typical stuff, right? And we're running Windows NT Workstation on all the computers within the JTF. Read through the email, typical social engineering. Hey, Mark, check out the attachment. Need you to review the document. What does Mark do? Double-click the attachment. The stuff we're all told not to do. Well, the attachment doesn't open. Double-click the attachment again, doesn't open. All right, well, something's not right here. I'll just email it home to myself. Okay? Now, remember, this is the top crust of the InfoSec world who's supposed to know better than to do all this, right? Email it home to myself, get home that night, sitting in there in my personal email. I fire it up. I'm running, I think it was Windows 98 or Windows ME or whatever was out at the time. Open up the email, double click the attachment, doesn't open. Double click the attachment again, doesn't open. Yeah, or whatever. Go on and start doing other things. At the time, we had a home network. This was in the dial-up days, and it was a 56K dial-up, to local phone company connecting into Earthlink or however we were connected. And there was a device called a modem router. I don't know if any of you remember these. It had a 56K modem in it, and then it had 4 Ethernet jacks on the back, little 10 megabit kind of a switched modem, or actually it was more like a hub modem. But anyway, you had a local area network off the back, and if any one of the computers needed to go off the local area network, the little 56K modem would kick in and would dial your ISP. It was kind of classy for the time, well before today's broadband. I was accustomed at the time to my older daughter, who's somewhere in the con, I don't know where she is, or else I'd dime her out and have some fun stories about her, that she was into this downloading, this thing called Napster, if everybody remembers that. And she was a teenager at the time, and I was very used to seeing the little lights on the modem just blinking away, because I know she's downloading whatever teenagers download. So I go to bed that night, the little light's just blinking away, having a good old time. And I figured, okay, I won't turn off the modem because one of my kids is probably downloading something that they're going to share legally with their friends, because we had taught them to do all this. Get up the next morning, walk over, take a look at the computers, little light still just doing its thing. It's like, well, that's kind of odd, but okay, maybe it's a big file that she's downloading, just kind of, writing it all off. On the way into work that morning, on the radio, lead news story, evil virus is attacking the internet. It comes to you as an attachment in an email. The text looks like it comes from one of your friends. It tells you to double-click the attachment. When you double-click it, nothing happens. But behind the scenes, it infects all of your shares and open files and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, okay, came from a friend, doesn't appear to do anything. Holy shit. Pick up the phone, call the house. My younger daughter had not gotten on a school bus yet. And I said, hey, go look at the little blinky light thing, which is what we called it. What's it doing? Okay, Dad. She runs over, she looks, comes back. It's still blinking. You want me to leave it on like you told me to? I said, no, you go ahead and turn it off this time. Oh, but you always told us leave it on if the lights are blinking. No, you can go ahead and turn it off now. So she turns it off. I'm all the way into work, into the JTF. I'm thinking, crap, I'm going to get down here, and every computer in DISA and across the DoD, because we're in the DISA building, is now going to have this stupid virus on it. I'm going to be the one buying the donuts for the next month, which is the normal price for your atonement of your sins. And I get down there, the only thing that saved my ass was the fact that we were running Windows NT workstation with the admin privileges turned off. And I was running it as a local user, not as an administrative user. That's the only thing that saved my ass. So I infected my computer, but not the rest of the network. At home, my computer and both girls' computers, this thing got in. And what it did is it executed is it looked for any payload that belonged to Microsoft Office, .doc, .xls, .ppt, etc. Any file that it found locally on your hard drive plus on any shares, and then it migrated into other computers through the shares and looked for it on the same thing on their hard drives. It set the file size to 0. So it didn't delete the file, it just sets its file size to 0. Now that's very evil, because the file's there and it's mocking you, and no recovery software will get it back. Once its file size is set to 0, the file allocation tables don't know what to do. It doesn't know where the end of the file is anymore, and you can't recover it. That date, by the way, is now on one of my old hard drives with the date and the time, because you can see all the zeros on there for file sizes nicely burned in. Well, it got onto kids' computers. Hey, Jeff, we're talking about my daughters. You know who I'm talking about. We won't go there. That's another story we won't talk about. And all of their documents are set to 0. And it turned out they were using Windows Word for their homework. And literally, my virus ate their homework. And gave them the legitimate excuse to tell their teachers that Daddy's virus ate their homework. Looked like the dog ate my homework thing. Now, the thing that saved my marriage, that didn't cost me this, was my wife's computer was turned off at the time. She's part of this local area network. Thank God it was turned off. It didn't spread into hers. That evening when she came home, and I'm recovering from the damage, looking at what happened to mine, the kids' computers, little puppy dog tears, not understanding why Dad, the trusted one, who would never do anything wrong, had let this bad thing go. My wife quietly just unplugging things. She unplugs the monitor, unplugs the keyboard, the mouse, CPU, because remember, this is back when we had big computers rather than nice little small laptops. And she goes up to the bedroom upstairs and she clears out a space and just starts setting things up. So, sweetie, what are you doing? She said, I will never, ever connect to your infected, used all this kind of words, network ever again. I can't trust you. I'm now going to be isolated from you because you cannot be trusted. For the next 3 or 4 years, literally, her computer stood alone. And it took that long to develop that trust to get her back in. Lesson learned. Don't double-click the attachments. Well, beyond that, user privileges, I mean, all these classic things that we've been teaching people, even those of us who think we know what we're doing, we screw it up. All of you probably have the similar type of experience. You screw it up, what do? You learn from it and you move along. And I got plenty more stories, but let's move along. NASA.
Well, folks, I don't know where to begin. In my career, I've worked all kinds of things before I ended up specializing in cybercrime, serial killers, murders, and a lot of different kinds of things. If you watch that TV show NCIS, they kind of glamorize this stuff, but actually, in some ways they kind of get to the essence of it. It really is that way, except for all the TV nonsense that sort of project the non-realities of the way it's like, but in some ways they get the elements and the essence of it. As the other folks were talking, I was trying to think of what kinds of things I could tell you that you might be interested in hearing about, or you may have thought about to yourself but never had anybody answer for you. And I started thinking back to the kinds of questions I would get when I would give speeches anywhere in my career, but I'll limit them to NASA for now. I used to go out and give speeches at NASA auditoriums, at NASA centers. There'd be 300 or 400 people there, and my job was to inform and educate about our mission and what we do. And usually after I gave a talk, I'd get questions about, we heard you say